summers, I would go biking around downtown New Orleans delivering important legal packages. A computer science degree at Harvard, graduated in '99. Spent about 10 years working for large corporates. A company that IPO'd in '99 called Scient. Job there out of college as a programmer. Pretty much did everything but programming when I was there. 4 years with Nextel as a sales engineer to Accenture in their London office.
And how long did you last there?
2 whole years. I stumbled into Shazam. Work that I did with Samsung for 2 years basically funded the company. I went to Korea 12 times. Started out as the junior guy on the business development team, and when I left, I was managing a 5-person team. There were things that Shazam just wasn't doing that I thought maybe we could or should. The biggest lesson from my time at Shazam was how effectively they stayed focused. To be successful as a startup, you got to do one thing and you got to do it really well, and you have to do it so well that everybody remembers it and talks about it.
So you quit?
I quit. Know that I needed some help, some technical help. Connected with a former colleague of mine, Eric Boggs, on a couple different ideas. We originally started with actually a music social networking site. Took a particularly different angle where we were categorizing people's tastes. We try to help you find other music friends. A 2-year journey where I learned what it's like to be an entrepreneur. Trying to do too much and not focusing. I would say I didn't quite appreciate the Shazam lesson until after my stereotypes journey. Got into an accelerator program with Dream It Ventures. We weren't clear on the problem and the solution. Created a VJ platform for influencers. We shut it down. 2 years in, we hung up our boots. Everybody else launched that last app with 30 influencers with over 1 million followers. I would say if we started with the last product first and had 2 years of runway, I think we could have done something with it. Emotional roller coaster, you learn practical skills, you learn how to manage the ride. If you have one successful day and move your business forward, and 4 days of the week you're failing, that's great. Move the business forward, but you've been kicked in the teeth for 80% of the time. That's hard. One of those years with another startup I co-founded called Motion Tracks. Like Peloton, but without the bike. Escape velocity that I think it needed. 4 years on a startup budget with a family is not easy. I then joined Tumblr as a head of business development there. I wasn't ready to start over and I didn't have any fresh ideas. There's an incubator in New York called Interplay. Great idea. And we think it's $1 billion company. We can call it 180. It's like a 720. People are still using fax and paper and PDF and email as a way of exchanging information. There's no tools. And he was like, you have no idea how bad this industry is. They needed a tech guy who knew how to build product and build teams and run companies. An incubator, they develop ideas, they validate the ideas, and they hire in CEOs to run them. Massive appetite to have a successful startup after 2 that have not gone as planned. Clear problem, a clear solution. I would say I spent the first 2 to 3 months learning the industry, talking to people, but then we raised some capital. Part of what Interplay offers as well is that network of investors is really valuable. So we launched it in end of 2017. We have this thing called commercial insurance, which is insurance for businesses. Anything you need to protect very valuable assets like your manufacturing equipment or your vehicles or your employees. It's a $250 billion industry and still a lot of paper and fax. So when you want to apply for insurance, they send you a PDF. The thesis behind this is that we can save roughly 25% of an agency's time. And we know that because Founder Shield is 5 times more efficient than a typical brokerage. We built a tool to convert PDFs into smart forms. So the forms are interactive. If you answer a question, it adds a new section. Hide and reveal questions based on answers to questions. That's the simplest thing. We can map questions from one form to another. So if you fill out your name and address on one form, you don't have to validate that somebody has filled out an answer, or that the phone number is a correctly formatted phone number. It's just the first step in moving the whole industry into a digital world.
How'd you turn these no's or hesitancies into yeses?
Keep banging on the door.
Did you change your product at all, or was it your pitch that needed to change?
Both. We realized very early on that we needed to focus on renewal business because for an established agency, 90% of their revenue is just renewing policies, workflows that automated the renewal process. And that's when I think things started to pick up. We have hundreds of agencies using the platform now. Between 2018 and 2019, we'll either be triple or quadruple our revenue from last year.
Oh boy.
Some people who invest for the vision, and some people invest based on metrics. So when you hit those metrics, you go back to them and you say, all right, we're this far along. And they say, okay. And now we're in a position where like people want to invest and we don't have enough room in the round. 5 engineers, we'll probably add about 10 people in the next 6 to 10 months. People select us oftentimes because our product looks better. They want it to look good because they're taking a previously personalized face-to-face conversation, putting it online. It needs to look good and it needs to inspire trust.
How do you think you've grown as an entrepreneur? In what ways?
I've been humbled. I've taken that with me into this journey, not as bullish and irresponsible as maybe I was in some of those early ones. A lot of little lessons along the way have contributed to how I've decided to run this company, and it's going great.
Welcome to Startup Hunter, also streaming on YouTube. I'm here with Jason Keck of BrokerBuddha. BrokerBuddha is a B2B SaaS product for insurance brokers, and they make insurance simple. So, Jason, on this show, what we do is we go all the way back. So I want to know, where were you born, and what did your parents do?
Wow, we're going way back. I was born in Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates. My father,
really before Dubai was cool.
Yeah, back it was pretty sparse, as my parents told me. My dad was Southern by the grace of God, worked in the oil industry, and had an opportunity to work for an oil company in the Middle East. And he met my mother, who is Palestinian, raised in Beirut, and they got married, moved to Dubai, and had a family.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So
pretty different than New York.
Absolutely. What was your first hustle? Were you selling camel jerky by the roadside?
Sadly, no. I left Dubai when I was 3 to move to New Orleans, which is a much more interesting place.
There's a lot of oil and gas off of the coast of New Orleans.
There's a lot going on in the oil industry in Louisiana, let's just say, and so my dad was from, and so we moved back there and spent my formative years in the wonderful city of New Orleans. It was great. Don't know that I had I think my. Oh, are we still going?
Yeah.
Are we losing it?
No, you're good.
Yeah, I think my first hustle was working for my dad, who was an entrepreneur himself. He, when I was young.
Did he have his own oil and gas company?
No, my dad left that world. He was an engineer by trade, but bought a bicycle delivery company in New Orleans when I was young. And so in the summers, I would go biking around downtown New Orleans, delivering important legal packages before, things like email came around. So.
Yeah.
That was a business that was threatened by the fax machine, briefly, and is now, materially different world. But anyway, that was my first hustle, and it was fun.
What was the first hustle you did on your own?
There were probably a couple things along the way, none of which really stick out, but I mean, the first real startup I did was a company called Stereotypes back in 2012. We created a modern day version of 1980s MTV.
Oh, wait, so even before that, so you were just a career. Now, what was your career?
My career.
Before you even got to that.
Before I got to that, so I'm a tech guy.
Yeah.
So, did my computer science degree at Harvard. Graduated in '99. Spent about 10 years working for large corporates. So I joined a .com company that IPO'd in '99 called Scient, and then.
So you got into the on the tail end of the .com boom.
Tail end of the .com boom.
Was it like super easy to get a job at Scient?
It wasn't super easy. I busted my balls to get that job.
Wow.
And it was fantastic.
Because there's all these rumors that the jobs were falling off trees, and I'm sure there was some of that going on.
There was, but there was a lot of competition for the best companies, and Scient was one of the darlings of the startup days. Sort of like an early digital agency for brands and building e-commerce sites. This is in like 98, 99. And so I got a job there out of college as a programmer. I spent about 6 months programming, and then I started an internship program for recruiting, and pretty much did everything but programming when I was there.
Yeah.
But it was fun. Great company, learned a lot there. And then spent some time with Nextel, back when they were launching mobile internet on phones, going way back. 4 years with Nextel as a sales engineer and a salesperson.
Yes.
And
so I already think that's interesting, because you're already gravitating away from engineering and into sales.
Yeah, I just found that spending 8 hours behind a computer every day, not talking to people, was not that satisfying.
I came to the same conclusion. It took me 15 years.
Fair enough. Well, it was weird because I loved my job at Scient, but what I would do is I'd spend the whole day basically networking and doing less programming stuff for the company, and then when everybody would go home at 6 o'clock, I would have to get on to my engineering responsibilities, and I would just code until about midnight, and then, this is back when you're 22, 23, and you don't have a life, and you can do all that stuff. So, but I loved it. I was like, this is great. I'm getting paid. I'm living in San Francisco. This is .com. Geeking out on tech stuff. I don't think I realized that I would never be a programmer, but I think I just gravitated away from hardcore programming, stayed in tech. I was fascinated with mobile, and that's how I ended up at Nextel.
So what was next?
Nextel, I became a sales engineer. That was a fantastic journey. I got to ride around with these enterprise sales executives at Nextel selling mobile data plans to large Fortune 500 companies, educating them about technology, 2.5G, 3G, why our technology was different and better than Sprint and Verizon and all the other players. Learned how to communicate about technology, present, generate presentations to educate people how things worked. It was very rewarding, right? I got to take advantage of a lot of things I learned in school and merge those with, I guess, what I felt was more natural abilities around how to communicate and connect with people personally.
So were you at Nextel up until you did your first startup?
About 4 years after joining Nextel, a little gap in my life with an opportunity to move abroad. It was something I'd wanted to do for quite a long time. I just never had the opportunity. And so a couple of things were coming together and I had a bit of freedom. And so I pulled the ripcord, applied to Accenture in their London office.
Which is a big consulting firm.
Big consulting firm, which I thought would be a lot like Scient, because that's what Scient was. It was a kind of a advisory consulting firm. But when it was very different, let's just say that. So the culture of a corporate consulting company in London versus the culture of a startup consulting company in San Francisco was night and day different. And so, although I learned a lot of great skills around how to do PowerPoint and how to manage client expectations, it was, I would say, a poor culture fit for me.
And how long did you last there?
2 whole years.
Yeah, two grueling years.
2 grueling years.
And then did you just quit and do your startup?
No, I stumbled into Shazam.
Oh, yeah.
Which was amazing. I was actually debating whether to come back to the US. I kind of did my hey, I've been here for 2 years. There's sort of a transition point. I could have gone back. Facebook was hiring some interesting mobile roles. Yeah, so I looked for roles in California and London. And to be honest, there really wasn't much interesting in London in the kind of early stage tech. I mean, this was 2008. There wasn't really a hub for tech in London at the time.
Yeah.
So Shazam was this kind of rare find that I came across, a gem, I would say, and incredible journey, life-changing job.
What did you do for them?
So I started out as the junior guy on the business development team.
So sort of like a business development is code for sales.
It was sales and partnerships.
Yeah,
so
partnerships too.
We were licensing our technology to handset manufacturers like Samsung and carriers like Vodafone and Orange. So this was before Shazam was an actual brand. It was just a piece of technology that could be licensed to other companies.
Yeah.
And so my boss at the time had gone out and signed up a bunch of partnerships, and he needed me to go out and make sure that they integrated our technology and rolled it out, because a lot of the revenue from that was based on them actually using the technology. So it was my job to get them to use it. And we did. And we had the work that I did with Samsung for 2 years basically funded the company while we pivoted into a free consumer mobile app. So
and did you go to Korea for that?
I did. I went to Korea 12 times in 2 years, pretty much once a quarter, and developed some fantastic relationships with some really interesting people at Samsung. Also experienced a very different culture.
Very different business culture.
Yeah, but you'll probably hear this as a theme throughout everything I talk about, noticing the difference between Scient and Accenture and Shazam and Korea. Business culture is fascinating, right? And it also kind of speaks to my interest in people and relationships, moving out of tech and moving into the more people-oriented roles. These are the kind of things that just naturally interest me. So.
Okay, so you're not at Shazam today. So how did that come to an end?
Shazam journey was awesome. I was there for 4 years. I started out as the junior guy on the business development team, and when I left, I was managing a 5-person team and 17 million in annual revenue. So it was a fantastic journey from, I guess, junior guy to head of the team. but the company had changed materially. It went from a licensing business to a product business. And I moved from London to California with the company to get closer with Apple and Google, who are our primary distribution partners, right? This is back when everybody was begging for App Store placement, right? Which was an interesting change, but there were two big differences. Number one, I was farther from headquarters, which was in London, and I wasn't as much a part of the strategic decisions of the company. And number two is that, there's a much different, the role of negotiating placement in the App Store versus going out and signing multi-million-dollar contracts was a little bit less rewarding. It became more of a marketing and evangelical role and less of an actual business role. So there were no shortage of ideas I had around building businesses and specifically related to music, and so I said,
now here's the question.
Yep.
You had all these ideas. Why in the last 10 years before didn't you pull the trigger and do any of them? When you...
Yeah, so a lot of the ideas came up in and around my time at Shazam when the company had a very specific direction with the product. So I would say the ideas were less sort of 10 years ago and more like the last couple of years at Shazam, where there were things that Shazam just wasn't doing that I thought maybe we could or should. And
so you're at this startup after a long career, wanted a startup, wanted a not startup, and then you're at this startup and you're seeing, how already they're starting to narrow their vision and just sort of stay and find their lane and just stay in it. They get big enough that they don't really want to rock the boat.
Well, yeah, that's actually probably the biggest lesson from my time at Shazam was how effectively they stayed focused. So the biggest challenge of a startup is staying focused on one thing that makes you different and better and not doing all the different distractions that you could do. Because there are plenty of options, there are plenty of paths we could have gone down, but for you to be successful as a startup, you got to do one thing and you got to do it really well, and you have to do it so well that everybody remembers it and talks about it, and you need that word of mouth marketing to spread. And Shazam did one thing really well, which was to recognize music.
And did you fight them? Did you ever say, like, we should do this? And they're like, no, we're staying focused. Did you have any of those conversations?
I wanted the product to be more focused on the social experience around music, and the sharing and the dialogue and creating conversations around music. And the moment that you capture a song, the moment that you recognize a song is a powerful moment that you frequently want to share. And there was some lightweight social functionality built into Shazam, but it wasn't as engaging as I thought it should be. Right?
So we're talking already 2011.
Yep.
Here you are at the end of your tenure at Shazam. So 2011, Facebook is already very established. Twitter's very established.
Yep.
So as Google's starting to do its terrible Google Buzz thing, or whatever it was called before that.
Right.
So social networking is really coming up.
Yep.
You feel Shazam's missing the ball.
Yep.
And so what'd you do about it?
So I pulled the ripcord.
So you quit?
I quit. I'd been there I quit 4 years to the day. All my options had vested. So, walked out with a really nice, sort of nest egg.
Did anyone else quit when they vested?
I don't know. I don't remember everybody's vesting schedule. So it wasn't, there was I think the last couple months in my role, I was a little bit less, it wasn't as rewarding as it was originally. And so there were a couple of things came together, and I kind of used that as a setting off point.
So you're in San Francisco?
In San Francisco, batting around ideas. Probably had too many ideas, candidly, at the time. Know that I needed some help, some technical help, because even though I was technically capable, I wanted to find some more help. And so did some outreach, reconnected with a former colleague of mine from Shazam, not from Shazam, from Scient, named Eric Boggs, who was a music fanatic, also lived in London.
He has curly hair, right?
Curly blonde hair? Do you know Eric? You see some pictures of him?
Rings a bell. I think I've met him. Anyway.
Great guy. He was living in New York.
Yeah.
And my wife at the time wasn't loving San Francisco. And she told me, she said, I'm leaving, you can come if you want to.
Right.
So we looked at LA and New York, and a variety of things came together around moving to New York, one of which, Eric being here at the time, decided to move. He was working at Etsy at the time, but was super passionate about music and wanting to do something entrepreneurial. So, we floated around a couple different ideas. We originally started with actually a music social networking site, just a kind of a Facebook for music, if you will. Not terribly dissimilar to your old business at Soundtracking.
Now, had Soundtracking already been out when you started?
If it had, it certainly wasn't blowing up at the time, or I don't remember. I remember there were some similarities. We took a particularly different angle where we were categorizing people's taste based on their personality, and we used some research from a professor in the UK who'd done some studies around the relationship between personality and taste.
Yeah.
And so hence the term stereotypes, which is a kind of a natural name for what we would do. We would categorize people. We would actually read in their Spotify feeds from Facebook, because that was when Spotify was blasting everybody's playing activity to Facebook. So we'd read that data in, we'd categorize you into one of 4 buckets, and then we'd try to help you find other music friends who shared your tastes.
So how did it go at Stereotypes?
It was, I would say, a 2-year journey where I learned what it's like to be an entrepreneur.
So let's talk about the first MVP and when you launched it and how that went.
First MVP was a web-based app that tried to do way too many things. Classic mistake of an early stage entrepreneur. Trying to do too much and not focusing. I would say I didn't quite appreciate the Shazam lesson until after my Stereotypes journey. But it was a web-based music social network. It had the ability to read in your playing activity from Spotify via Facebook and kind of categorize you into certain buckets, and then gave you ways of highlighting the songs you really loved and sharing them back onto Facebook, trying to create a bit of a viral loop. We spent about 6 months building it, another 6 months trying to make it work. Recognized that it wasn't working. We got into an accelerator program with Dream It Ventures, and then we pivoted into a mobile music messaging app. So a way to create groups of people, almost like old school music clubs. So you create a group of friends, and you have almost like group chat where people could post songs and build playlists in those groups.
Do you think you spent too long, 6 months developing it? Couldn't you have hacked something together in 2 weeks?
Way too long. Way too long. Way overcomplicated. Not focused enough on one killer feature. I mean, granted, I don't think our concept was as crisp at that point as it needed to be.
Was as what?
As crisp as it needed to be. Like, we weren't clear on the problem and the solution. One of the most important things was when we moved to mobile, there's something unique about mobile. Given the screen size, it forces you to focus on kind of one core experience. So that was a big upgrade. We got a lot more interest in that product. Everybody was doing things on their phone anyway. Still didn't have the breakout success we wanted, and so we pivoted one more time into what we call a modern day version of 1980s MTV. This is around the time that Vine and Instagram were becoming really popular with short form video. And so we created a VJ platform for influencers to essentially curate music videos and talk about them like they were VJs. And we actually had one of the original MTV VJs as an early adopter, which was fun.
So double A+ for hustle.
Yeah. But we shut it down. 2 years in, we hung up our boots.
So why on the last pivot? Why did you give up?
You know, when we first started Stereotypes, there was an assumption that the viral mechanics of Facebook would allow us to grow without spending money. This was just after Zynga had launched their gaming on the platform.
And look how they did.
And they did great for a little while.
I'm still an investor in Zynga. I need my money back.
Yeah.
I'm holding on to it.
So unfortunately, everybody else discovered the same thing. And so the Facebook news feeds were so flooded with crap that the ability for a new company to sort of break through using social just sort of deteriorated. And so we suffered from that. And so whether it was the social networking app or the group chatting app or even the modern day MTV, the viral mechanics just weren't there. So and we launched that last app with 30 influencers with over 1 million followers.
So that's really interesting because, you think if you get influencers on board, it'll launch, but ultimately it doesn't matter because whatever you're launching, you can't, if you have a fire that fundamentally, let's say the logs are wet in the fire,
yeah.
no matter how much gasoline you pour on this particular fire, it's not gonna sustain itself.
I think that's very true. I would say if we started with the last product first and had 2 years of runway, I think we could have done something with it.
Yeah.
We were pretty gassed, and I think with a product like that, there's a buzz factor that has to happen, or else it doesn't go, right?
Yeah.
Like the fire actually has to start, and we never actually we never found the right way to get it started. So, and we didn't have the staying power at that point. It was sort of a year on the first product, 6 months on the second, 6 months on the third, and then we were just gassed.
So yeah, so you couldn't really pull back before you punched on the last one.
I think we pivoted well. We just and there was a lot of excitement from the people that were the influencers who came on board. We had some interesting people on there, but we just creating that buzz is tough. So I think for any startup, you have to do one of two things really well. You either have to have a very acute problem with an amazing solution, which is a very kind of B2B story,
yeah,
or you have to be able to create some kind of emotional buzz around what you're doing, right, in the internet sphere, in a way that's like people are talking about you. Word of mouth marketing has to get there, otherwise you're never going to break out. So even the most popular products in that world have had trouble. Like House Party is a perfect example. Those guys were in our accelerator program, and they created some incredible buzz with some of their early products, and they're still pivoting and repivoting and hanging on to that buzz is pretty damn tough. So anyway, consumer's hard is probably a good way of summarizing that.
Did you take funds from the accelerator?
We did. We took some funding.
So were they angry?
No, they know that only one of their. I think actually most accelerators, they get everybody in, they look around during the program, they see who's going to do well, and then they put all their energy into those companies.
Yeah.
And they'll help you and nurture you along the way, but they know that not everything, it's a big risk, super early.
Right, so it's not like they're doing a Series A where the stakes are a lot higher.
Yeah, I mean, they're putting in 25 grand, they're putting that in across 100 companies over a couple years, so they're just going to double their efforts onto the ones who are successful. So. But that was, I mean, I'll tell you what, I learned a shitload in those 2 years.
Yeah.
It's an emotional roller coaster. You learn practical skills. You learn how to manage the ride. You find ways to roll with the punches, and it gives you some perspective. I mean, I grew up playing baseball where you get out. If you're successful 3 out of 10 times, you're a hero, right? And startups are a lot like that. You get one of the best pieces of advice I read was, 5 days a week. You're working hard 5 days a week. If you have one successful day and move your business forward, and 4 days of the week you're failing, that's great. Because
I'm working 7 days a week.
Fair.
I'm working 8 days a week.
That's a good point. Well, that's probably more accurate. So let's put it this way: if you have one good day a week, whatever your working schedule is. After 12 weeks, after 3 months, you've really moved the business forward, but you've been kicked in the teeth for 80% of the time. That's hard.
Yeah.
So that is, I would say, probably the biggest challenge of any entrepreneur is going through that journey. And having done that, a couple times in the past has been super important for me and in my journey today.
So what'd you do after you quit, and how much time did you get to BrokerBuddha after Stereotypes?
Yeah, so I spent the next 2 years floating around. One of those years with another startup I co-founded called Motion Tracks.
What did that do?
Startup. Motion Tracks was A lot like Peloton, but without the bike. So we had Equinox instructors coaching running, spinning, and elliptical classes paired with music, streamed through your phone, designed for some of these value gyms out there that have a lot of machines and no classes. So you pay 20 bucks a month to go to the gym, but you don't know what to do there. So you download our app, and for $5 a month, you can stream all these classes from amazing instructors. So that was interesting because I actually went back to programming on that one.
Yeah.
And that one had, I would say, by some standards, more success than Stereotypes.
Yeah.
We made money, still making money.
So why did you leave that?
Seeing it was more successful, but it wasn't having the escape velocity that I think it needed.
So was it profitable?
It was washing its face.
And what did you do? Did you have outside capital involved?
Maybe 100 grand of angel capital, so not meaningful.
And were these professional angels or friends?
Friends and families.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was
now
better in some ways.
Did your co-founder?
He's still running it.
Was he okay with you leaving?
He's disappointed.
Yeah.
Remind you, I'm now at the end of, this is at the end of 4 years of startup life, right? So finances kicks in, right? You've got a 4 years on a startup budget with a family is not easy.
Okay, so you have dependents.
Yeah.
Got
At this point, I've now got 2 kids.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's a lot more pressure to have something more secure.
Now you said you did 2 startups. Did you do?
That was it. I then joined Tumblr as a head of business development.
What
there.
year?
2015.
So very safe. I would call that a safe move because Tumblr wasn't it hot?
It was past its prime.
Yeah.
Needed an infusion of ideas and help, and it was a safe move with an opportunity to make a big impact if I got support.
And had Yahoo already bought them?
Yeah, post Yahoo, pre Verizon.
Oh, I didn't even know about the Verizon.
Well, Verizon bought Yahoo, so Tumblr went with it.
When did that happen?
2 years ago.
Holy cow!
Yeah, Verizon bought Yahoo.
Yahoo's sort of fallen off my radar.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, you know what? I met some great people at Tumblr. I don't think the leadership had the appetite for the kind of moves that were required to save the company. At the end of the day.
Marissa Mayer?
She was running Yahoo.
Yeah.
There were David Karp, the original CEO, was still there. Great visionary, and there were a couple other. The people I worked for were fantastic. The company needed a couple moonshots. It needed some way to revive the brand, and there wasn't a lot of appetite, or there wasn't enough infrastructure to be able to make those moves. So, and by that I mean they didn't have the right people and processes to try. We tried to spin up a little lab internally to explore new ideas, but ultimately didn't get the resources we need for that. Yeah,
This is the corporate, bureaucratic, political life.
It was a little less corporate than an Accenture, I would say. In fact, a lot less corporate. But from how do you get projects and products done? It was actually pretty painfully structured.
Yeah.
So, and not for lack of trying. I think there were some good people there trying to do good things, but it didn't pan out as I'd hoped.
All right, so why'd you leave?
Why'd I leave? Well,
you had a safe job.
I had a safe job. I was, at the end of the day, without having any support for the projects I wanted to take on, it was incredibly unfulfilling.
Yeah.
So, and any natural entrepreneur, that's like torture, right? You're running around, I had a lot of free time, way more than I wanted, I would say. Thank you.
Thought that was poop.
That's all right. Way more than I wanted. And was eager to do something entrepreneurial again, but only in the right environment.
Well, now you have kids.
I have kids.
Yeah, the risk appetite is even more difficult.
Yeah. Yeah, the Verizon acquisition was a blessing because it created some runway for people who were ready to leave, let's just say.
Yeah.
So I took advantage of that acquisition to take on something a bit more risky, but something that already had some legs. So I wasn't ready to start over and I didn't have any fresh ideas. But there's an incubator in New York called Interplay, who I'd met in my startup journey and really liked. And so when I knew the Verizon thing was happening, I reached out to them and said, hey, look, what do you got going on? You know, you looking for founders, CEOs? And they said, we have this crazy idea. It's not a crazy idea, we have a great idea. And we think it's $1 billion company, but we need a CEO. And the only thing you have to do is learn insurance.
So here you are coming from a real product focus, a real consumer focus, music mainly, and you know nothing about insurance. And this, you know, this is, I never think of insurance as a super sexy field, but can I mention Policy Genius? Because I don't think they're really competitive with you,
no,
right?
They're not. You can mention them, yeah.
Yeah, so Policy Genius has made an amazing branding play out of insurance. It's
Sure.
gotten people excited about insurance.
I'm not excited, but they're just less threatened by it, right? It's a friendly brand, right? That makes it easy for people to access insurance in a way that's not so daunting.
Yeah.
Right?
So this is like,
I even call it 180. It's like a 720. It's like, what the hell?
exactly.
So a couple things have changed. I mean, first of all, I called my brother, who through a series of life events had also landed in insurance. He was also a tech guy. He'd been a tech and salesperson most of his career, and then ended up joining a company and selling insurance to startups. So,
what's startup insurance?
What is startup insurance?
Yeah.
Well, you need a variety. You need liability. You need benefits. You need,
Sure.
A lot of basic stuff. And so his company was selling that to startups, and they got acquired by one of the biggest insurance brokerages in the country, a company called Hub. So Hub International. And so he had been doing this for a couple of years, and I called him and I said, I met these guys. I don't know anything about insurance, but they're telling me that people are still using fax and paper and PDF and email as a way of exchanging information. There's no tools. And he was like, you have no idea how bad this industry is. And right, you know, coming from a tech background, he was living in it and feeling the pain. He's like, I don't even know what they're doing, but he's like, there's so much capital in this industry and so much appetite for technology that if they found something, or you can find something and make it successful, he's like, there's a huge opportunity in front of you.
So this is your brother?
My brother, yeah.
And is this after the incubator pitched you, like?
Yeah, this is kind of as I was evaluating whether or not to take the role.
Yeah.
Right?
Now, was there somebody at the incubator with the kernel of the idea already, or?
Yeah. So there's another company in the incubator called Founder Shield, who had been successful using technology to engage with their clients.
In insurance.
In insurance, yes. Founder Shield is a insurance brokerage that uses technology to gather information from their clients. And so they said, you know, we're going to take that concept and we're going to spin up a new company. It's called BrokerBuddha. And they'd done a little proof of concept. They'd already done some work to kind of...
And they wanted a CEO to run it.
Well, yeah, they needed a tech guy who knew how to build product and build teams and run companies. And because they were still, you know, Interplay is an incubator. They develop ideas, they validate the ideas, and they hire in CEOs to run them. So they did that with Founder Shield originally. And they kind of used Founder Shield to validate this idea. And then they said, you know, this is actually a whole separate company that we need to create out of this. And so here we are.
Yeah.
I would say the other relevant part of that story is, I think as I was evaluating whether or not to join or take the role, you know, I think when I was younger, being connected to music and media and consumer was a bigger part of my identity.
Yes.
As a single person.
You're like, I'm the music tech guy.
Yeah, really fun. I go to parties and talk about it. I work at Shazam. People, oh my God, it's amazing, right? It was a big deal. Fast forward to, you know, 2 years ago, I'm now a father of 2. I get a lot of fulfillment from my kids. I have a massive appetite to have a successful startup after 2 that have not gone as planned. And so I don't know if I'd call it a compromise. I just cared less about being in music than I did before. I also knew how hard it was to build a consumer product. And so this was a situation that was a lot more deterministic. from the perspective that there was a clear problem, a clear solution. All it required was somebody to come in and build out the product and go sell it. I didn't have to go out and create buzz. I didn't have to like rely on creating a buzz factor that like is kind of a big unknown. I knew how to build product. I knew how to hire people. Just go do it.
So is it literally just you?
No.
At first? No,
Oh,
but
at first. Yeah, it was just me. And I would say I spent the first 2 to 3 months learning the industry, talking to people, trying to understand Founder Shield's business, trying to understand, you know, the prototype that had been created and how it did or didn't fit with the needs of our prospective clients.
And when was this?
2017.
Okay.
Summer 2017.
Were they paying you?
Were they paying me? So initially, no. The runway from Verizon was kind of understood to be covered for a period. But then we raised some capital, some angel capital. We started bringing on developers.
You know, were these strategic angels?
No, I would say friends and family at this point.
Yeah.
Still friends and family.
And
network.
yours?
Mix of mine and the Interplay network.
Okay, so you're already starting to get some people, you know, outside of your sphere. So that's you know, some diversification, and
that's part of what Interplay offers as well. Is that network of investors is really valuable. So yeah, so we're you know, building product. We're hiring people. We're
cheap documentary.
this is the best kind. Cheap documentary? Come on.
This is New York. We're leaving that in.
For sure. This is the way you do it. Entrepreneur at heart, right here. So anyway, so yeah, we brought on people, we built product, we launched it in end of 2017. And
now, what was your product? A mobile app, or and we haven't really gotten into what's the thesis like?
Yeah, so
you've spoken about how it's a $1 billion industry, but I don't think we've really covered what the thesis is.
Yeah, so there's commercial. So 3 types of insurance. You have personal insurance, which is things like auto, home, life, travel, stuff like that. That's mostly sold by insurance carriers directly to people. So that's not our world. That's like one part of insurance. A lot of people are familiar with that, so I always start the explanation with that. Then you have medical, which is, or health, which is medical, dental, vision, typically bought by employers and used by employees. More people are familiar with that. But then you have this thing called commercial insurance, which is insurance for businesses. Could be pretty much anything you need to protect, you know, some very valuable assets like your manufacturing equipment or your vehicles or your employees. It's a $250 billion industry, and it's primarily sold by brokers, right? These are 40,000 independent agencies around the country whose primary job is to help businesses find the right coverage for their needs. They connect them to carriers, they facilitate the process, and they get a commission as a result of doing it. It's historically, you know, 40 to 50-year-old, very male heavy in the front office, very female heavy in the back office, and still a lot of paper and fax. So when you want to apply for insurance, they send you a PDF, sometimes multiple PDFs, and you're answering the same questions on every form like a doctor's office.
And they think they're high tech with those PDFs.
Yeah, it's like, hey, this is they call them fillable PDFs, or we have fillable PDFs. These are the kind where you can enter in data yourself. It's like, whoa, okay, chill. So what we built, so the thesis behind this is that we can save roughly 25% of an agency's time by building some automated workflows through technology, right? And we know that because Founder Shield is 5 times more efficient than a typical brokerage. Their account managers can process 5 times more applications than somebody in another agency because their technology works that way. And so the thesis was, if we can save a company 25% of their man hours, then they should be willing to spend a little bit of money on us to make that work and end up with more business in the long run. And so that's what we did. We built a tool to convert PDFs into smart forms, interactive online smart forms. And we let agents use those forms to gather client information online, sort of like TurboTax, and output signed documents that they can use to get quotes and bind coverage.
Now, when you say smart, what aspects of it are smart?
So the forms are interactive. If you answer a question, it adds a new section. We can hide and reveal questions based on answers to questions. That's the simplest thing. We can map questions from one form to another. So if you fill out your name and address on one form, you don't have to fill it out on another form. We have things like required fields, right? Things that don't really exist on PDFs, right? We can validate that somebody has filled out an answer, or that the phone number is a correctly formatted phone number, or an email address is correctly formatted. Oh, and guess what? They're readable because, you know, they're using typed characters, not handwritten text. So it's a lot of, frankly, very things that you and I would consider like pretty minor improvements to the process, but it's just the first step in moving the whole industry into a digital world, is getting the data in digitally.
So that's the thesis. Now, did Interplay just get you some of their existing customers right away, and was it just...
No, because Interplay customers are I mean, Interplay doesn't have customers. Interplay has...
brokerages?
Nope, they have companies, they have startups.
Ah.
Interplay is a portfolio of tech
I meant
companies.
FounderShield.
Nope, FounderShield, we're actually selling to FounderShield's competitors, believe it or not. That's what our business is.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, their view was, hey, our business is strong, it's gonna be strong, somebody else is gonna build something like this eventually, so why not sort of share in the love of that and help make it happen. So, I just went out. I mean, the nice thing about brokerages is they want to be found, right? Because they're selling. So their information's online, their contact information is online, and there are 40,000 of them, so it's a lot, but it's also not, there's not millions of them.
So
right?
Tell me, how many rejections did you have to get before you got your first yes as a customer? And what was the business model back then? Is it like $100 a month?
Yeah, we charge around $1,000 a year for the product.
Which seems to me like a steal.
It is. I mean, given the amount of time you save, it's a huge deal.
I would think something like this costs like 10, 20 grand.
Well, it's per user, right? And these agencies have multiple employees.
Okay.
You know, so if you have a 25-person agency, if every single user is going to have a license, that's up to 25 grand. And there's volume discounts and all that stuff. But
so tell me about the first yes, and I want to hear about but really about all the no's you got before that. Or was it literally successful from the start?
Well, I'm trying to think. The no's were a bit more like, there was a lot of yes, we recognize this is important and that it needs to happen.
But it wasn't. It wasn't like, I need this right now.
It was, once it's, I mean, in the beginning, it was obviously a very nascent product. There were a couple early adopters, one of which was a company in California who got acquired by Hub, where my brother works, interestingly enough, and still continues to be one of our biggest clients. A lot of the no's were less around, no, we don't think so. It's more around, I need to figure out how to change my process to use this, because their processes are just, these companies are very process oriented, right? They have people who are trained to do things in a certain way, and it's very important to get it right. And if you change the process, you create risk of things getting wrong, and that creates what's called exposures in insurance. And given that these are agents, they're very worried about creating exposures. So I would call it a bit more hesitancy than no's.
So how'd you turn these no's or hesitancies into yeses?
Keep banging on the door. So
did you change your product at all, or was it your pitch that needed to change?
Both. We realized very early on that we needed to focus on renewal business, because for an established agency, 90% of their revenue is just renewing policies every year and getting paid on them. So, you know, FounderShield, as a young brokerage firm, was very focused on getting new business in the door. And so one of the things that we had to do a little differently from them was come up with some workflows that automated the renewal process. And that's when I think things started to pick up, because people were like, yeah, I got 2/3 of my company just processing paper for renewals.
And renewals, to me, like, it's the same thing, more or less.
It's the same thing.
So
you just have
there's less risk.
You need to update your employee. The thing is, if you want to fill out a renewal application, you have to fill out the same application as last year. And only like 3 things have changed, like your headcount, your revenue, your payroll.
So there's really, in theory, no need to fill out a whole other application.
There is no, in fact, no reason to fill out another application. You simply need to edit. So what would happen is people would print last year's application, they'd scratch out numbers, they'd scan it in and email it back to their broker. It's just, I mean, the whole process is mind-numbing. It's like, why? And the answer is because there's no other better way to do it until now.
Let's talk about the growth of your customers.
Yeah.
Are you on this trajectory?
Yeah, we have hundreds of agencies using the platform now. And we're projecting to, between 2018 and 2019, we'll either be triple or quadruple our revenue from last year.
Oh boy.
So, and the goal is
I know it's not music, but that's pretty exciting.
That's pretty sexy. That's actually what Mark, the founder of Interplay, when before he even told me what we were doing, he's like,
said, I think you raised some money.
We have raised some capital, that's right.
So where in your growth did that occurred? Were you know, what was your, I want to know, like, were you already growing and did you use that
yeah,
to make it
you know,
sell?
there are some people who invest for the vision. There's some people invest based on metrics.
Yep.
Since the beginning, we've had different things to talk about at different times. Sometimes it's more about the vision. Some people want to say, oh, well, you're this stage, you need to be this far along. And so when you hit those metrics, you go back to them and you say, all right, we're this far along. And they say, okay, here's a check. Not quite that simple, but that's kind of roughly how it goes. And then you sort of get to a point where you get to a tipping point where we are now, where you can see the compounding effect of everything we've done before starting to affect the growth going forward. And that's when everybody starts to hover around and say, oh, I want to invest, I want to invest. And so the conversation flips from like, hey, let me convince you to giving me some money. So now we're in a position where like people want to invest and we don't have enough room in the round. So it flips like literally overnight.
Do you keep a round closed and really say we're only raising our number, or do you oversubscribe?
You're always looking for interest in people investing. And you know, the amount of money you take in at a certain valuation affects the ownership stake of all the existing employees. So you want to be careful about how much you sell too early. Typically, once you close the round, you start lining people up for the next round.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much where we are right now.
How many employees or people are on your team?
There's 15 people on the team.
Is there a co-founder, or is it just you?
It's just me.
Yeah.
I was brought in as the CEO. I mean, technically, my partners in Interplay are co-founders because they developed the concept. They don't work in the business every day, but they're effectively co-founders and partners. But operating the business is just me. I've got a chief revenue officer, Sean, who's amazing. He's doing all our sales. We got a 15-person team.
What is your breakup of your team? Like, how much is tech? How much is not tech?
We got 5 engineers. We've got.
They're all here or remote?
No, remote.
Where?
All over Mexico, Eastern Europe, Pakistan.
And is an agency doing that for you, or did you just get them one by one?
Oh, we found them individually. So I know enough about technology to be able to recruit and hire good people. So use my chops there to find the people I needed. We got a good group. And so with the new funding, we'll probably add about 10 people in the next 6 to 10 months. So we'll hire a person a month.
Do you think you need to have them all in one spot, or are you just?
It's better, but it's not required. There's a lot of companies who are successful in hiring and managing remote teams. I think New York's a tough market to find good people, but I think with the new capital and finding the right technology leader, we'll be able to get some good people.
So do you have competition who's doing a last mover advantage thing on you, or literally came up at the same time?
We have this is a 2-horse race.
Yeah.
We have a competitor called Indio, INDIO. Started about the same time, probably about 6 months before we did. And we compete with them head to head.
Yeah.
We win some, we lose some. Lately, we've been having more success with some of the new features we've been rolling out. People like the way we do branding. Actually, interestingly, my background in media has inspired me to put more of a design-oriented approach to a B2B product. And that has really resonated with our agency clients and prospective clients. So people select us oftentimes because our product looks better. And when they want to put smart forms in front of their clients, they want it to look good because they're taking a previously personalized face-to-face conversation, putting it online. It needs to look good and it needs to inspire trust. So that's been a big difference for us. So I would say we're building the market together. People aren't deciding whether or not they should do this or deciding which one of us to use. And it's a 2-horse race. It's very early. We're both doing well. I think there's room for 2 players. It's an Uber Lyft thing, right? So there'll be 2 successful companies in this space, and excited to be one of them.
So back to you. The recession, will probably come in like a year or 2,
yeah.
If not tomorrow. Do you think your business is strong enough if you don't raise another round to survive that?
Yeah, I mean we'll be profitable in about a year at the current rate.
Oh, that's pretty awesome. That's like most companies take 10 years to get profitable.
Yeah, the SaaS businesses are
and
great.
Uber's taking 15.
They're still not there. SaaS businesses are great because they generate revenue early, right? They're almost like consulting or subscription businesses where like you're actually making money fast. And so you don't need, I mean, you can raise more capital and try to be more aggressive, but that you also have to sell more of the company. So it's sort of a kind of weighing that out as you go.
What's your vision? Like, do you want to go public?
I want to build a very successful, profitable company, and if there's a natural exit opportunity along the way, we'll take a look at it, whether it's an acquisition or an IPO. But for me, this is about the journey and building a successful startup from pretty much from scratch. The people that go along that journey with me, and you know, good outcome for everybody involved.
So, most important question and the last question.
Yeah.
How do you think, and I ask this to everyone, how do you think you've grown as an entrepreneur? In what ways?
I've been humbled, most importantly.
Talk about that.
Went to high school in New Orleans, got to Harvard, was like, wow, this is amazing. Went from Harvard to Shazam. Was like, man, I can do everything. Felt really confident with what I could do. And then ultimately had to swallow a tough pill with two tough startups. And so I've taken that with me into this journey, not as bullish and irresponsible as maybe I was in some of those early ones. And I think I've learned, I think the results are clear, right? We've been very successful. We're growing intelligently, we're not being irresponsible. A lot of little lessons along the way have contributed to how I've decided to run this company, and it's going great.
Fantastic, and he just won a prize, I don't know. So that's
yeah, I won a pitch competition from TIE, which is a global investment organization.
It was a pretty sweet prize.
Yeah, it's nice. So
icing on the cake.
Yeah, it's been fun. It's been fun.
So thank you so much, Jason.
My pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity. This is awesome.
Yeah.
We should do it again.
Let's do it again in a few years when, thanks.